What was the first R-rated movie you got to see when you were growing up? Seriously, I want to know. Mine was Speed, and it was a thrilling experience. Even the super long opening credits where it's just an elevator shaft and the music plays all the different themes for the music to come, that stuff pumped me up. This movie is iconic and legitimately one of the best action movies of the last 50 years. However, no one believed in this future blockbuster while it was getting made. It would launch several careers and take audiences for a heart-pounding ride. But why was it such an uphill battle to get the studio's full confidence? Well, sit back, relax, take a pop quiz, hotshot, and let's look at Speed, the blockbuster nobody believed in. The writer of Speed, Graham Yost, wasn't a screenwriter for the big screen when he first got inspired to write it. He was having a conversation with his father, Elway, about the movie Runaway Train. Elway, who was the host for a show called Saturday Night at the Movies, was describing the plot of the film. In what was probably a rare event, Elway got an element of the plot wrong and described it as a movie about a train that had a bomb on board and couldn't stop. In an interview with Empire magazine, Yost said, "I came out of the movie and thought it was pretty good, but I thought it would have been better if there was a bomb that was going to blow up. Being physically able to stop but not being able to because something horrible would happen. I pitched the idea to a friend and said the bus shouldn't go below 20 miles an hour. He said, make it 50. Man, imagine if Yost had stuck with 20 miles per hour. 50 is already a little slow, but 20? Good call, Graham's friend. The name of the script changed for the better as well. Speed is a great title that perfectly encapsulates what the film is really about. However, it used to be called Minimum Speed in early drafts. Yost decided that it wasn't a flattering title and dropped the minimum stuff. I mean, can you imagine if Deep Impact was called Minimum Impact or Die Hard was called Die Minimally? It doesn't work. While feeling miserable on the set of Full House as a staff writer, he would routinely wait around for an assistant to come to him and tell him there was a phone call. He hoped the call would be about Speed getting sold so he could quit his soul-sucking job. Unfortunately, that never happened while he was working on Full House. He eventually quit because he just didn't gel with the show's vibe. While at a wedding celebration in Oregon, he got the call that Paramount had bought the script. Things were starting to speed up. Oh, shut up, it was there for the taking and you know it. However, Paramount never knew what to do with the project, and it ended up going to 20th Century Fox. In Yost's original script, the whole movie basically took place on the bus. There was no elevator shaft opening and no subway derailment at the end. The studio was adamant that it couldn't be on the bus the whole time. So Yost went to work, adding the thrilling closing act with the subway train. That's one of the things that makes Speed so memorable. It's easy to remember the 3 stages that happen in the movie because they are so distinct. The opening scene with the elevator shaft was actually suggested and added by the film's future director. A young and unexperienced Michael Bay was desperate to direct Speed. Bay was a highly accomplished music video director by then. However, he didn't have any feature credits to his name at that point, so the studio passed him up. I could see it working, but I could also see it veering wildly off course. Interesting to think about though. The studio wanted the director of Die Hard, John McTiernan, but he declined, stating that the plot was too close to, well, Die Hard. However, someone from the crew of Die Hard was waiting in the wings, talented cinematographer Jan de Bont. Jan had been the cinematographer on big films like Die Hard, The Jewel of the Nile, The Hunt for Red October, Flatliners, Basic Instinct, and Lethal Weapon 3. In fact, Lethal Weapon 3 was the last big screen movie he did as cinematographer before transitioning fully to director. Before this, he always found himself frustrated that he was stuck realizing other people's visions. When Jan first heard that the script for Speed was about a bus, he thought it would be boring. However, to his delight, as he kept reading it, he was sucked in and started envisioning all sorts of imagery for the movie. When Jan decided to add the elevator shaft opening scene, it was inspired by his time on Die Hard. He and some crew members were stuck in the elevator on the 40th floor of the Yakatomi Plaza, which is really just the Fox Plaza building. Firemen showed up and rescued Jan and crew through the rooftop hatch. The fear and claustrophobia of the situation stuck with Jan so much that he had to immortalize the experience on screen. Jan was a fantastic choice for director, not only because his use of the camera is so full of movement and fantastically composed shots, but also because he knows the importance of humor and characters. He's not just a cinematographer who makes pretty pictures. This could have been a disaster if he only cared about the cinematography aspect. Now, it was time to find an actor to play Jack Traven. 20th Century Fox reached out to the Toms first. You know, Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks. They passed. They also went to Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, who had just been in the hit movie White Men Can't Jump. They turned it down as well. A frontrunner after those stars passed was Stephen Baldwin. Yep, it could have been Stephen Baldwin playing Jack Traven. Wouldn't that be fun? According to Graham Yost in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, it was someone's kid at the studio who suggested Keanu Reeves as the lead. And at first everyone scratched their heads at this notion. The first films that came to mind were Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. However, they also remembered he did a good job in the movie Parenthood. Not only that, he had recently played a cop in the movie Point Break. You might remember Point Break as the movie where Keanu and Patrick Swayze surf, rob banks, and skydive. I love it. Jan liked Keanu because he was vulnerable on screen. He also liked that Keanu actually didn't want to be an action star. He found this interesting and took it on as a challenge. Jan slowly convinced Keanu that it could be fun doing all these action scenes. Soon after, Keanu found himself really getting into it. In fact, Jan created a monster and didn't even realize it. Before long, he found himself having to talk Keanu out of doing every single stunt. Much like Reeves, Sandra Bullock wasn't the first choice to play Annie either. Originally, the character of Annie was a paramedic. They offered the role to Halle Berry, who turned it down, thinking it would be a one-dimensional character. She would later star with Keanu in John Wick 3, so it all worked out. Other choices that were tossed around were Meryl Streep, Kim Basinger, and Anne Heche. The studio thought Keanu wasn't a big enough name at that point, so they were keen on sticking him with a big-name actress. However, Jan de Bont really wanted Sandra Bullock and wouldn't budge. The studio eventually relented, and it was chemistry at first sight. Jeff Daniels was cast as Keanu's partner, Harry Temple. That year, he was starring in another breakout film, Dumb and Dumber, as Harry Dunn. This shows the range of the guy for sure. He's very likable in both films, but the tone is so different. He plays off Keanu very well, and you just like the guy. Also, the part where he realizes that his luck has run out, amazing. That look, man. Jeff and Keanu went through training with real SWAT members to ensure they had an authentic movement and attitude. In fact, 2 squad members from the SWAT team were on set at all times to ensure all the officers were behaving authentically. For the bad guy of the movie, Jan didn't want a stereotypical villain vibe. He wanted someone who was almost like an everyman, albeit a crazy everyman. Enter Dennis Hopper. The character he plays is a treacherous villain that I can't help but enjoy watching, due to Hopper's charisma and interesting acting choices. He feels dangerous and unpredictable, but not over the top. It's just a flawless performance. Strangely enough, the Howard Payne character was actually a decoy in previous drafts of the film. He was originally written as a sidekick to the Harry Temple character, who was later revealed to be the actual villain. Before Jeff Daniels was cast, Ed Harris was circling the role. When he dropped out, Jeff was in, and the makers of the film decided that the twist was too much. So they kept Harry Temple as a good guy throughout the movie. I'm really glad too. Harry Temple works so much better as a good guy. One last character had to be cast, the bus. The production landed on an older model Santa Monica bus. It had a lot of character. It also, like Graham Yost's favorite show Full House, had twins doubling as each other. In fact, it had 12 versions made up for the production's various needs. The bus was very small when you take into consideration all the stunts and angles they would need to accomplish throughout the shoot. They had 2 versions for exterior shots, 2 buses used for explosions, 2 buses used for interior shots. One of those was called the Pope Mobile because it had a plexiglass section on the front where the camera crew could get head-on angles of the actors. One where the driver was on top of the bus, 1 bus for the freeway jump, 1 for driving on 2 wheels, 2 for various stunts like running into cars and things like that, and a couple of other buses thrown in there as well for miscellaneous uses. It's fun to think about how much work they put into making this movie feel real. They did it the old-fashioned way, by doing it for real. This was just the beginning though. After casting was finished, it was time to get the bus rolling, but not before calling in the Doctor, Joss Whedon. Before creating his hit show Buffy the Vampire Slayer and directing The Avengers, Joss Whedon was a script doctor. He was called in to do some dialogue work on Speed. He's uncredited on this movie, but Graham Yost has mentioned that Whedon wrote most of the movie's dialogue. With filming underway, the cast and crew ended up pushing themselves to their limit. One of the reasons this movie still holds up today is that everyone seemed to be giving their all, even when they didn't think the movie would be a hit, which was the case with Jeff Daniels. He retracted this opinion once he saw a final cut of the film, though. Sandra Bullock went above and beyond and learned how to actually drive a bus. She passed her test on the first try. I say above and beyond because she rarely had to drive the bus while filming. It was the stuntmen who controlled everything off camera. The evolution of Keanu Reeves, action star, began in full with this movie. I know he was in Point Break, but this is the movie where he fully caught the bug of doing his own stunts. This stunt right here, he did it for real. This stunt here, that's really him. Him. You get the picture. However, it can't be ignored how awesome the stuntmen on this film were. For example, the big jump, the improbable scene that we all love even though we know it wouldn't happen like that in real life. This scene is iconic. It's on the poster of the movie, for heaven's sake. This wasn't even in the original draft of the script. Jan de Bont was driving somewhere one day and noticed a huge gap in the freeway off in the distance. He thought about how scary it would be to make that jump with a bus. He called Graham Yost and had him add the scene to the script. When it came time to shoot it, the crew prepared heavily. They got a bus with extra shock absorption and moved the stuntman back as far as they could in the bus in case anything happened and he crashed into something. His placement would prevent him from flying out the window. They also made sure they gave him a seating rig where it would absorb the brutal shock of the landing, which was going to be super rough. You see, in the 70s and 80s, a lot of stuntmen were breaking or injuring their backs due to vehicle stunts like this. It's painful to think about what could happen to the spine upon such a harsh impact. However, after 2 jumps, the shot was in the can, and it totally amped up the tension in the movie. Kudos to the stunt team. By the way, if you thought that the highway scenes were somehow shot on a backstage at the studio, you thought wrong, hotshot. It just so happened that the I-105 was under construction during filming, so they didn't have to shut the highway down, which was a fortunate turn of events for the film crew. All the cars you see racing back and forth on the highway were production cars, every single one of them. Wow. How this movie cost only $30 million still astounds me. And the way Jan de Bont keeps the cameras moving throughout the entire film, it just adds so much momentum, especially when you consider that we're essentially on a bus for a huge chunk of the movie. All those years feeling frustrated while realizing other directors' visions paid off. When he finally got up to bat with speed, he hit a home run. Here's an example of Jan's superb shot composition. Look at this part where one plane is landing, the other is taking off, and our hero bus enters frame, all in one shot. Nowadays, you could digitize both of those planes no problem, but this shot did it for real. Or how about this shot where you see Captain McMahon in his helicopter, and then we pan over to the street where the bus is barreling down the road. This isn't just impressive on a technical level, it's also impressive that it includes one of the characters from the movie in a super tangible and intricate way. Like we're watching this happen for real. 'Cause we are. Something about modern movies seem almost sterile. Everything seems a little too digital and not tangible. The sense of danger has diminished. I mean, who's going to complain about how the production team opted to blow up a real airplane instead of using CGI? They even paid the owners of Howard Payne's house location $5,000 to blow it up. They didn't really blow the whole house up, they were smart in how they did it, but anything that was damaged, they fixed up before moving on. That's a pretty sweet story for the owners of the location to tell. There were some digital effects to aid the movie, like the gap in the freeway wasn't really a gap, it was digitally added in later. The doves you see flying around it are also digital. The elevator shafts were both real and miniature effects combined. The opening credit scene, for example, miniature effects. Same with the subway sequence at the end. Still, those are real miniatures that are sold really well on screen. They aren't computer generated, and it shows. Test audiences loved the movie. Apparently, a Fox executive knew they had something special when audience members who were leaving to go to the bathroom would walk backwards so they would miss as little as possible. The studio ended up moving the release date from August to June. It paid off. The film grossed $350 million worldwide. It was the first blockbuster hit Keanu Reeves had as the headliner of a movie. Sandra Bullock became a huge star, and Speed was given credit for launching that stardom. Jan de Bont's next movie was Twister, and it made more money than Speed, grossing $494 million worldwide. Speed is a classic that remains untarnished to this day. But wait, the saga didn't end with Speed 1. There were a ton of ideas pitched for the sequel. Jan de Bont ignored them all. He wanted the sequel to be about a recurring nightmare he was having. A nightmare about a cruise liner crashing into land. I think this dream was actually a warning for Jan not to make the movie. He mistook a nightmare for a good omen. It didn't help that he was contractually obligated to direct the sequel either. Keanu Reeves didn't return because he didn't like the script. He filmed Devil's Advocate instead. Sandra Bullock only did the film because she wanted to get her dramatic film, Hope Floats, funded. Jason Patric was hired to replace Reeves, and he only did so because the studio promised there would be big script changes, which, yeah, didn't happen. Everyone involved seemed like they were doing it for the money or because they were obligated. Speed 2: Cruise Control is a movie about a boat going kinda slow, actually. I mean, cruise ships aren't known for their speed, you know? The name Cruise Control also brings to mind setting a speed and leaving it alone. Not very intense, is it? I enjoyed it when I was a kid, to be honest, but I knew it was bad. I'm glad it exists because it's one of those shipwrecks you can't believe got made. The budget ballooned to a rumored $160 million. Yet it looks somewhat cheaper than the first film, which only cost $30 million. It ended up grossing $164 million worldwide, which rendered it one of the biggest flops in movie history. Jan de Bont never recovered. After this, he went on to make The Haunting and Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life. They both flopped as well, which marked the end of his directing career. It's a shame though, I still think he's a very gifted filmmaker. Speed and Twister are some of my favorite films of all time. If you haven't seen the first Speed in a while, I suggest you do that right now. If you enjoyed this video, I've got a pop quiz for you, hot shot. You've got a like and subscribe button in front of you. What do you do? What do you do? See you next time.